Hello, so today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 games of 2021, and I also have my top 5 worst games of 2021. Overall, it was a pretty good year, and I had a lot of games to look forward to beforehand, and then eventually, yeah, a lot of those games worked out for me, but some of them didn't. For example, I had, well, actually, some of those were on my worst games. So let me just start with my worst games. At number 5, I have the GTA trilogy. I wasn't sure if I really was going to play this, but it looked pretty fun. And I've never really played the GTA games, so I figured this might be a good time to try them. But they look kind of terrible, as most people probably know. So that's why it's at number 5. Then at number 4, I have Balan Wonderworld. This was a game that I kept following a little bit because it looked kind of fun. And, it's a 3D platformer. I really enjoy those types of games. But, it wasn't very polished. It has a lot of problems. So that's why it's at number 4. Then at number 3, I have Bowser's Fury. And really, it's because I would love to play this game, but it's a pretty short one and it's part of Mario 3D World, and it's just full price, €60, $60. And I have the original 3D World on the Wii U, and I enjoy that game. The Switch version has they put faster speeds in the Switch version. You can run much faster, and I played it a little bit at a friend's house, and honestly, it didn't feel all that good to run faster. Like, the game was already pretty fast when you run. I don't know, it just feels like the levels weren't built for it. It's a weird update in my opinion. Not very necessary at all. And Toad is pretty useless now because he's even faster. So I don't know. I don't enjoy this port. And yeah, I would love to buy Bowser's Fury. Like, if it was available for like 10 to 20 euros on the Wii U eShop, as just a DLC, then I would have played it and I would have loved it. But to pay €60 just for Bowser's Fury, that's not very realistic in my opinion. It's a pretty shitty thing, and Nintendo has been doing that a lot. Just porting games for full price and adding a little something that makes you feel like you have to play it even though you've already owned it and played it. And that's kind of shitty in my opinion. Now, at the same time, just porting a game without adding anything is kind of shitty too. There needs to be some kind of balance, I guess. Like, the sales point is that you can play Bowser's Fury, and the game is not very long, and it's not worth the full price. Hopefully, I can play it eventually someday. Maybe emulate it, maybe a separate eShop release, whatever. Maybe, hopefully, I can play it someday. Then at number 2, I have Demon Turf, and the funny thing is, I had this on my top 10 most anticipated games pretty high. I was really excited for this game. And it's not necessarily a knock on the developers or anything. It's a pretty good game, but it's not for me. So it's one of my worst games, but not like objectively, of course, because it kind of looks like a PlayStation 1 game, like the models at least, and I don't necessarily have nostalgia like that. Like, I grew up with the Nintendo 64, but I don't need to play that type of art style in new games, and it plays a bit awkwardly, and the mechanics are like confusing to learn. It gets repetitive quickly, and it's confusing to know where to go. I don't know. I was pretty excited about it because it was a 3D platform and it looked pretty solid, but I was just bored, and it felt like a chore to play. And I played a game from the same developers called Slime Sand, and that was pretty good. That was a 2D platformer that had amazing music. So I expected this game to have pretty good music too, and the music was pretty lacking in my opinion. Maybe I should have played more to find that out, but yeah. Then at number 1 of my worst games list, I have Mario Golf Super Rush. And this game is just awful in my opinion. Like, I am a really big fan of Mario Golf. Like, on the Nintendo 64 and on the GameCube, it was perfect. It had the timing was very modern, and a lot of pretty serious golf games copied it. Actually, you can time your shots. If you time your shots correctly, then the shot will go straight. But there's no such thing in Super Rush, you can't even time it. So the ball could just go out of bounds, even though that's not your fault at all. And that was the whole fun of Mario Golf, to be able to time your shots. And it's also, there's something where you used to be able to zoom in and see where the ball is going to go, and now you can't even see that at all. So if I was in like a really down bunker, then it was just impossible to go back because I had no idea where the ball was going to go in Super Rush. So it's a pretty awful game in my opinion, and I've seen a lot of people enjoy it and say, oh, it's pretty good. A lot of people that said that haven't really played Mario Golf ever. So in my opinion, it's pretty weird. Why not just emulate the first two games and try those? Why do you think this one is going to be like, I don't know. A lot of people, they act like the Nintendo Switch games are better than ever or anything, but in my opinion, they're playing it pretty safe with a lot of games, and it's not very much a guarantee that the game is going to be good. Okay, so my top 10 best games. At number 10, I have Knockout City. It was a pretty fun game, but I eventually kind of stopped playing it. It's a dodgeball game. It reminds me a bit of Splatoon because you have usually only have one or two teammates, so it's 3 against 3 most of the time, and it's pretty fun to time your shots and curve them and be able to catch them and time them. And there's some tactics involved, but it's also easy to pick up. But eventually, I don't know, it got pretty stale. There's not that much depth to it. Okay, number 9 is WarioWare Get It Together. It's a pretty good game, but it's probably one of my least favorite WarioWare games because you have to control your own character, and that means that every character plays differently, and it sort of felt like it beats the purpose of WarioWare. The WarioWare games usually you only have to use really one button or anything, or motion controls or whatever, and that was more fun in my opinion. This didn't work quite that well, and it was a pretty short game. Now most of the WarioWare games are short, but right before this we had WarioWare Gold on the 3DS, and it was a compilation of the best micro games, and that one was pretty long, I would say, like much longer than other games, and it had like full-on voice acting and great cutscenes, very funny. This game had lacking voice acting, and it felt like a downgrade to WarioWare Gold in my opinion, but still pretty good and fun, and it has co-op. You can play it together, so that's the main appeal to it, but I don't really enjoy co-op like that. So at number 8 I have Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. I played Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD a couple of years ago, and I heard a lot of people say that one was pretty bad compared to the GameCube ones. Banana Blitz HD was a Wii game, and it was remade for new consoles. And this one is a remake, Banana Mania. This one is a remake of the GameCube ones, and I would say they're pretty equal in my opinion. In Banana Blitz HD for the Wii and the new consoles, it had a jump ability, and that meant that it was more of a platformer to me. It was pretty fun, and it had longer levels, which meant that it was more of a fun obstacle course. But Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, this new one from the remake from the GameCube games, it doesn't have a jump ability, so it felt pretty gimmicky. Like the levels were shorter and just more trolly, if that's the right word. Like they felt like annoying sometimes. But I do see that it was from a time where it was more creative. So I would say that it's equally good as Banana Blitz HD, but not like what I expected. Like a lot of people said it was the best Monkey Ball game. I don't necessarily feel that way. I haven't played that many Monkey Ball games, but like this one and the previous remake, they're just pretty equal in my opinion. Then at number 7 I have Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. And the funny thing is, it wasn't originally on my most anticipated games list. It didn't look that much fun to me. Well, let's say I wasn't sure if it was going to be a good game, because in the trailers it looks a bit crappy animation wise, and there was a Nickelodeon card game recently that was pretty bad. So I wasn't sure. Like I needed to play it, and then I just bought it when it was on sale for like half the price or whatever, and it turned out that it played really well. Like surprisingly, like probably this is probably the most fun Smash Brothers clone that I've ever played. Like I've played Rivals of Aether and Brawl Out, and those were good, but not as fun as Nickelodeon All Star Brawl. Like it's pretty amazing to play as your favorite Nickelodeon characters, and they really figured out the moveset for all those characters that works. My favorite characters are the Avatar characters, and it was pretty amazing to play as them. I mostly play as Korra, and she really does play like Korra, and it's genuinely fun to play as her. There's some content lacking though. There's not that many single player modes, and the multiplayer mode is a little bare bones, so it doesn't have that much replay value. But they're adding characters, and it's already been fun so far. So yeah, it's pretty deserving at number 7. I'm looking forward to more characters and stuff. Then at number 6 I have Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. The one I played is Shining Pearl, and I never really finished the original games because I got stuck sometimes, and because it's a slow game. I got pretty far the first time though, but this remake it improves on everything. Like the game is much faster, the animations are much better. It's a pretty faithful remake, so there's not that much I can say more about it, but it just improved on every little thing, and I appreciate that a lot. And it's one of my favorite Pokemon games, like right away now. Then at number 5 I have Axiom Verge 2. I played the original Axiom Verge, and it's tied with my favorite Metroidvania that is not a Metroid game, with Ori and the Blind Forest. Like that one and Axiom Verge, those are pretty good. Both of those games nail the feeling of a Metroid game while still adding creative ideas. While most Metroidvanias, in my opinion, they only keep the core of a Metroidvania and then feel like they have to reinvent everything. And then to me, it doesn't feel like a Metroid game anymore. And for me, the appeal of a Metroidvania is just because I love Metroid so much that I want to play more. But I want to see ideas that Nintendo wouldn't be bold enough to try, and that's exactly what Axiom Verge does. And now Axiom Verge 2, it feels a little less like a Metroid game, but that's not a bad thing because it's a sequel. You got to innovate a little bit, and it has a lot more fun items and equipment. The environment's pretty cool. It's very snowy, but for some reason it has like Arabic music, like Middle Eastern or whatever. And for some reason it really fits. Like you wouldn't think so with a snowy environment. But yeah, the level design is really good. The snowy environments and the music is really good. And there's a pretty good story as well. Like compared to the first time, the first game had a cool story, but this one goes a lot deeper. And there's some like twists in it, and it's really good. I think I prefer the first game because it's more like to the core a Metroid experience. But this one, it was really good and really challenging too. Like I got stuck a couple of times and then I figured it out, and felt pretty smart for figuring it. I don't know. It was, yeah. So number 4 I have Zelda Skyward Sword HD. Now it's a remake and it's a pretty simple remake, so it's yeah, I mean, Zelda Skyward Sword is one of my favorite games. It's my favorite Zelda game, so I considered putting it at number 1, but it's a remake, so I'm not gonna do that. But still, it gave me a little bit of a fresh experience. I tried the button controls; they're not that good in my opinion. I really much prefer the motion controls, but at the same time, the motion controls aren't really an improvement from the Wii version because it doesn't have a sensor bar, and the Joy-Con, honestly, their motion controls are a lot worse. But still, it was easier to calibrate. And, mostly the game is just in HD and 60 FPS. This is the first Zelda game in 60 FPS. And that made the experience a lot of fun. I keep going back and forth in my head. Like, if I ever want to play it again, would I play the Wii version or the Switch version? Because, like I said, I still prefer the motion controls in the first game. But, HD and 60 FPS is pretty nice, so I guess I do appreciate the Switch version. It's at number 4, so that should mean I would play it again. Although I would say that they reduced the amount that Fi talks, and I know for most people that's a good thing because it can slow the game down. But I feel like I have less of a connection with her. It was pretty fun that she would tell you stuff and give you like those calculation jokes and stuff. And I feel like the side quests are more obscure now. Like in the first game, every time there was a side quest to do, a character would have a yellow speech bubble on top of their head, and that got me always really excited. Like, hey, there's a side quest to do. And now in the remake, I noticed that that doesn't happen as much. A lot of side quests, I just didn't know when. Like, I kept wanting to do them because I knew sometime they're gonna be able to do, but then it wasn't the right time yet. Like, I needed a certain objective to be done before I could do a certain side quest. And then by the time I was able to do it, the character didn't have a speech bubble on them. So I never knew like when the side quest was available, and even when it was available, I didn't know. And it meant that I had to Google some things because I didn't remember quite right how to do a certain side quest. When in the first game it was super easy, and there's something to say for that. Maybe it was too easy, but it's a side quest. It shouldn't be super hard. It should be fun to be able to 100% complete a game. It should be you should be rewarded for just going out of your way to do side quests. Yeah, and I always 100% completed the original Skyward Sword. I'm not sure if I would have done that if the HD version was the first one I would have played. But yeah, like I said, overall it's an improvement, and I just really appreciate that it's in HD and 60 FPS. And the added changes for most people are pretty good, so it's at number 4. Then at number 3 I have Mario Party Superstars. It's a really good game. Like the first 3 Mario Party games is mostly what it's based on, and those games, they have some problems. They aged a little bit, and this game improves a lot on that. And it's finally going back. The recent Mario Parties, they were really experimental and not in a good way, and this one is finally going back to the old format, and they picked a lot of good mini games from it. The boards are good. My only problem is that it only has 5 boards, even though most Mario Parties have like 6 or 7. And this is a compilation of the best boards, so that's really weird in my opinion. And I would have expected that maybe they would have added more down the line with free content DLC, but apparently they're not doing that. So that's really unfortunate in my opinion. Now maybe there will be a sequel, like Mario Party Superstars 2, and they will base it on the GameCube games, and maybe that would be really cool. But I would appreciate free DLC for this too. And then at number 2, I had a lot of difficulty with ranking this, and I went back and forth a lot. Metroid Dread at number 2, and it hurts a little bit to put it at number 2 and not 1, because I'm such a big Metroid fan, and it was great. It was really good, but not nearly my favorite Metroid game, and that's why all in all it's not at number 1. The level design overall is not as good as I'm used to from other Metroid games, and the backtracking was also not great, because usually the solution was just teleporting to another location. Like, you get a new item, you teleport right next to it, and you're usually at the right location. And whenever I didn't use the teleportation devices and I went to look somewhere else, it took me a long time to backtrack properly and find the right location. And then other times I just teleported and I was like, oh, it's right there. So that's not great in my opinion. What I do like is the bosses. These are the best bosses in the entire game, and the items are pretty cool. Like it took a while to get the Morph Ball Bomb, and there's some new items that are cool, and the old items are pretty much better than ever. So that's pretty cool. But also like going back to some things I didn't appreciate. It's a lot of people I talked about this in like a ranking Metroid games video before, by the way, so I'm repeating myself a little bit. So if you want my thoughts more in full, then you can check that video out. But yeah, a lot of people, they said that Metroid is finally back, and it's been like so many years until a 2D Metroid game But we had Samus Returns pretty recently, and I know that's just a remake, but a lot of the stuff that makes Metroid Dread feeling so modern, that was already a thing in Samus Returns. And in my opinion, Samus Returns is a lot better. So I guess if Samus Returns didn't exist, then I would be higher on this game, and I guess that's a bit unfair to Metroid Dread, but it is what it is. Like the better experience came right before this, in my opinion, by the same developers. But yeah, overall number two in my top 10 lists from this year. Because at number one is Psychonauts 2. And I recently played the original Psychonauts, and it was pretty good, but so dated. Like the level design was sometimes awkward and complicated, and collecting all the collectibles was nearly impossible. Like it was way too much, so it was like, what's the point of even collecting then? Uh, but the story was amazing in that game, which is pretty unique for a 3D platform, I would say. But then Psychonauts 2, it improved on everything. Like the level design was finally really good, and the themes were much better. The collecting was easier. It was such a smooth experience. It was such a good game. It's one of the best 3D platformers I've ever played, and it still felt unique, and it still like continued sort of where the last game went off, ended off. Um, but I wouldn't say you have to play the first game. Like I would say, this game is much better, so just play Psychonauts 2. It's free on Game Pass, so that should be easy and nice. Not sure I have much to say about it. Like it's just solid, and the voice acting is pretty good. The side quest and the collecting was fun. Yeah, just a really solid game. So those are my best games and my top five worst games. So just to uh, sum up, my worst games were at 5 GTA Trilogy, then Balan Wonderworld, Bowser's Fury, Demon Turf, and then at 1 Mario Golf. And then my favorite games were Knockout City at 10, WarioWare Get It Together, Super Monkey Ball, Banana Mania, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, Pokemon Shining Pearl, Action Verge 2, Zelda Skyward Sword HD, Mario Party Superstars, Metroid Dread, and then at number 1, Psychonauts 2. Well, I would like to say honorable mention, and that was Deltarune. Deltarune isn't really finished. It has the first chapters up for free, so I would recommend that you play it. It's really good, but it's not really finished, so that's why it's also not on the list. But it was really good.